For 2 years, one date sat in every compliance calendar in the technology industry: August 2nd, 2026. The day the European Union's Artificial Intelligence Act would finally bite. 6 days before it arrived, the European Union moved it. 16 months down the calendar, not all of it. What moved was the part everyone had been arguing about since the first draft in 2021. And high risk in the Act's own language is not an abstraction. The Act itself has not gone anywhere. It entered into force on August 1st, 2024. Its bans on the worst uses took effect in February 2025. Rules for general purpose models followed in August 2025. Then the schedule broke. What broke is a listed set of uses. The software deciding who gets hired, who gets credit, who gets into a school, some of the ways police assess people. Those moved to December 2nd, 2027. High-risk AI built into regulated products, machinery, and medical devices sits on a separate track running to August 2nd, 2028. The stated reason is not a change of heart. The machinery was not ready. The technical standards a company would measure itself against were unfinished, and several member states had not named the authorities meant to enforce it. A rule with no yardstick and no inspector is not yet a rule. Europe's largest consumer group did not accept that framing. On June 29, 2026, BUC called the package a significant setback and warned that simplification was becoming cover for deregulation. Both can be true. Parliament passed it by more than 7-1. So that is the story that got written on August 2nd. Europe blinked. It is accurate, and it is the less interesting half because something else took effect that same day, on schedule, with almost no argument. Article 50, transparency. If you are talking to a machine, it has to say so. If a qualifying deepfake is published, people have to be told the first time they see it, and a system generating synthetic audio, image, video, or text has to mark its output so another machine can read it. Systems already on the market get until December 2nd, 2026 for that marking duty. The first two are manners. The third one is infrastructure. It says the file itself has to carry a sign that a machine made it, not a notice on a website, a property of the thing you are looking at. And then there is the sentence that decides how far this reaches. The European Commission's own guidance says providers established outside the Union are subject to the Act if the output of their system is used inside it. Read that as an engineer, not a lawyer. The duty follows the output, not your company's address. And nobody can predict where a file travels, which leaves two choices: mark everything in one pipeline, or build a system that knows at generation whether the image will be opened in Lisbon. The second one is not really an option. For a global provider, one marking pipeline is likely cheaper than deciding file by file where an output will travel, and getting that wrong runs toward a fine worth up to 3% of worldwide turnover, which makes the strict rule a plausible global default, not an automatic one. An old story about regulation with one new wrinkle. The wrinkle is that most of Europe's fights with big technology are about products, and a product can be withheld. On June 8th, 2026, Apple said its new Siri features would not ship in the European Union at all, naming the Digital Markets Act, not the AI Act. A feature is something you ship to a place, and a company can decline to ship it. A file is not. Nobody ships a file, which is how a rule written in Brussels ends up inside a photograph taken in Ohio by someone who has never heard of Article 50. But Europe did not do this alone. It did not even do it first. In China, the labeling measures took effect on September 1st, 2025, and they are stricter: a visible label and an embedded one. In the European Union, Article 50 landed on August 2nd, 2026, and in California, the State Transparency Act became operative that same day after lawmakers pushed its start date back. Nobody planned that collision. China, the European Union, and California, working separately with different politics and different motives, landed on the same mechanism, not ban the output, mark it at the moment it is made so a machine can read it. The fight everyone watched got postponed. The clause almost nobody fought about now binds jurisdictions covering well over 1 billion people, which sounds like a solved problem. It is not, because a mark is only worth what it survives. In practice, a mark can live in attached provenance data, riding along with the file like a label on an envelope, or in a watermark embedded into the media itself, built to survive cropping and compression. The attached kind is fragile. A screenshot removes it, and platforms can strip it or simply fail to preserve it on upload. Re-encoding degrades what is left. The embedded kind is harder to remove, not impossible. Tools that strip both are a short search away, and researchers have shown that pushing an image through another model can break marks built to survive. So look at who is actually bound. The duty binds providers and deployers in scope, the operations with legal departments, and something to lose. It does not make every private offline use legible. The obligation may land most readily on the actors visible to regulators rather than on private use or a file whose marker has already been removed. So this does not give you a world where you can spot a fake. Many outputs from large providers may arrive carrying a marker or provenance credential, but coverage is uneven, by provider, by modality, by product. What it points toward is stranger. As coverage grows, it is the unmarked that becomes conspicuous. The covered provider duty is only the base. From January 1st, 2027, large online platforms have to detect qualifying provenance data, show people what it says, let them inspect it, and not knowingly strip it to the extent technically feasible. And from January 1st, 2028, the makers of a capture device, meaning a camera, have to offer a latent provenance record of what it captured, embedded by default where feasible. Watch the direction of travel there. It starts as label the machine's output. It ends with the real thing carrying a provenance record too, including things no machine ever touched. Follow that direction and provenance becomes the default. Then the burden quietly turns over. Unmarked content starts to read as suspect. The question stops being, is this fake? It becomes, who vouched for this? And proving a thing is real to strangers may come to require a recognized issuer. That recognition can be granted by a platform, a device manufacturer, or a certificate authority. Issuers are institutions. That is a different world from the one the debate was about, and not obviously a worse one. A photograph you can trace back is worth something real, particularly to people whose work keeps getting laundered through a model without credit. But it shifts power from anyone holding a camera toward whoever can issue a signature and be believed. And it is entirely possible this fizzles. Provenance has been tried before and mostly stayed a developer feature nobody looked at. Google said in May 2025 that its watermarking had already covered more than 10 billion pieces of content, which sounds decisive until you notice how rarely any of it reaches a person. Marks only matter if something reads them, and whether the software people use will preserve and read them is still unresolved. What is settled is which half of the law is doing the work. The high-risk regime, the one that took 5 years to negotiate and dominated every headline, is parked until December 2027. The transparency clause, which moved through almost as housekeeping, now sets a compliance requirement for how large generators may have to write a file. About 190 organizations signed the Commission's voluntary code before the duty applied. That is industry preparing, not proof that every generator marks every file. So, the piece of the rulebook that may end up shaping what a couple of billion people see was not the piece anyone was fighting over. I would like to know where you land. If every image arrives either marked or conspicuously unmarked, does that make you trust what you see more? Or does it just train you to trust whoever issued the signature? Tell me below, because I do not think there is an obvious answer.